Manhwa title in the right corner of the screen. Enjoy watching.
In the kingdom of Bran, the princess had no rights. The stepmother could have beaten the princess just for leaving the room. But Krista doesn't even have a maid, so she left the room herself to get some embroidery thread. The queen was disgusted to be around the princess because she is dirty inside. When a person reaches the age of 12, he or she receives a divine gift. For example, farming abilities where a person can perfectly grow any crop, or high skills in sewing and the art of cutting. Also at an ideal level. Gift: increased military power, enhanced physical strength, and more. The king's divine gift is to control water like magic, and the divine gift of the queen who died was singing. The current queen's divine gift is charm. But of course, she doesn't waste her gift on nasty people. And the princess's divine gift, it's so shameful and dirty that it's a mystery. Krista, the all but forgotten princess, lives in the most remote place in the palace, in the most ordinary room, eats ordinary food, and wears no jewelry. But even she sometimes has visitors. This is her favorite little brother, Elmar. She's on good terms with him. It was for the sake of embroidering a shawl for him that she went out to get the thread, and his mother beat Krista. She embroidered him a dove because she knew how much he loved doves. His sister knew and understood him better than anyone. Elmar was glad. He had a sword dancing lesson this morning, and he was determined to show his sister what he had learned. Elmar is the son of the current queen and the crown prince of this country. And although the prince and princess are from different mothers, they still love each other like family. His divine gift was mastery of swordsmanship. Thanks to his divine gift, he was gifted with the talent to excel in swordsmanship. His dance had always been popular in this kingdom. The opportunity to demonstrate swordsmanship in a sword dance is a guarantee of peace. But still, he hasn't reached his ideal yet. He needs more training. Elmar is a very kind boy who doesn't like conflict. And as lonely as Krista was in this castle, as despised as people despised her brother was her only ally. His presence alone filled her heart with warmth. And unlike her, Elmar is a child who deserves to be loved. He deserves to be happy more than anyone. A few days later, when his father called him to his house on important business, Elmar decided to take his sister with him as well. Of course, no one called her, but it was about the whole country, so the princess had to come too. But before they entered the negotiating room, standing at the door, they heard the shocking news. The Gardland Empire has declared war on the kingdom of Bran, and there can be no mistake. A neighboring country has indeed suddenly attacked a village. Everyone was shocked by this. Soldiers from a neighboring country not only robbed the village, but also killed women and children, very mercilessly. The neighbors had been allies before, but suddenly war broke out. The king has not yet had time to figure out what to do. One of the people suggested sending the crown prince with swordsmanship to fight on the battlefield. He has a gift, so he should definitely win. Krista hoped this was just a discussion and Elmar wouldn't be sent to the battlefield. He's only 14 years old. You can't force a good child to fight. Krista prayed that her father would make the decision not to send his son to war. She didn't want to say goodbye to Elmar, but the king thought it was indeed a good idea to send the crown prince to war and quickly made that decision. Elmar immediately reassured his sister, telling her that everything would be fine and she could take it easy, but Krista was very anxious. The day when the troops marched out came quickly, and Elmar was determined to fight for his country. Krista had never been able to talk him out of it, though she had tried hard. So now she could only hope that he would return home safely, no matter what. But then she had no idea he was never coming back. 5 days had passed since Elmar had marched with the army. Information about the enemy gradually began to become clearer. The enemy general that Elmar is fighting is the second prince of the Gardland Empire. Speaking of the second prince, he is a ruthless warrior, directing the expansion of the territory. His divine gift is kept secret, but it's obvious that it probably has something to do with the war. Elmar is only 14 years old. Even if he had swordsmanship, his kindness could be used against him on the battlefield. Still, putting him in charge of the army was too dangerous. Krista agonized at the loneliness of being without her brother, but worrying was a waste of time. There are things she can do without even leaving this room. In order to get a truce, Krista started looking for materials to negotiate with the Gardland Empire. Krista spent entire days researching information, and then one day she looked out the window and saw it. A soldier arrived, reporting on the state of war. Krista immediately ran out of the room to find out what had happened. The soldier reported that their army had been wiped out by the surprise attack of the Gardland Empire's army, and Crown Prince Elmar was shot and killed in battle. The queen was shocked by her son's death. She had no idea that this would happen. Krista had not gone out to the men until now, But now she went quickly to the soldier and asked, had Elmar really been shot? He could have been confused with the other soldiers. But then she was handed an item left by the deceased. It was the handkerchief with the dove on it. The prince was on his way to negotiate the release of prisoners of war, but at that moment he was wounded by a treacherous arrow from the enemy. His body remained lying at the bottom of the cliff, with this handkerchief tied to the reins of his favorite horse. The horse remained standing on the cliff, so it was possible to get the handkerchief. Krista blamed herself for not insisting when war was first declared. Although Elmar's opponent was the ruthless second prince, it was to his credit that this child was killed by a treacherous arrow. By now, everyone could see how hard Krista was taking the death. So sometime later, the queen came to speak to her in person. She ordered Krista to go to the battlefield and kill the second prince of the empire. That way she could pay the kingdom of Bran for the favor it had done to keep her alive. Krista agreed. With her divine gift, she will be able to take revenge on the second prince of the Gardland Empire. Near the border, Caloan's territory was one shambles. There were very few surviving residents, and they were in a terrible state. Krista heard about it, but she didn't think it would be so bad. One of the local residents told Krista where the enemy's camp was. You just have to go through the forest. But the man found out that the woman alone was going to infiltrate the enemy camp. He was very concerned and tried to stop her. It was very dangerous and reckless, but Krista was confident since she too had a divine gift. No one knows what the princess's divine power is, and she's hiding it for the greater good. In fact, it was kept secret as an embarrassment to the state, and she never used her power. Krista walked through the forest, approaching the border. Closer and closer she saw the dead soldiers of her kingdom. It was unpleasant to look at, for Krista immediately imagined his younger brother Elmar, who also fought here, how hard it was for him to. Now only soldiers of the Gardland Empire are left alive in this place. Krista dared to approach them. She said she was a citizen of the empire and had come to support the soldiers, bringing food. The three men first laughed at her, and then one of the men hit her right in the face with his fist. It was a clear hit. They thought it was very funny and something to be proud of. But once Krista fell, and the basket of food also fell, then the soldiers saw the food that is only prepared in their empire. And then they believed the girl was really a citizen of the empire, and decided they could eat it. Krista tried to barely move so as not to attract attention, and simply bided her time. Her power would be kept a closely guarded secret and known only to a small group of people. God gave her the ability, a deadly poison. As soon as the soldiers ate her food, they fell to the ground in agony. Krista made it very easy. She doesn't need to create poison because her body fluids are deadly poisonous and cause a person to die. Krista spread her diluted blood on the bread. She used just a drop of blood and diluted it so the soldiers wouldn't die from it. However, because the person has come into direct contact with the blood, they will be in great agony on the verge of death. Krista never thought the day would come when she would use this disgusting divine gift in public, but she had already decided that she would spend all her energy to kill the second prince. Krista had already reached the camp of the Empire's warriors towards evening. One tent had an imperial coat of arms on it, which meant this tent belonged to the second prince. The situation was quiet and peaceful now, and so the soldiers relaxed in their territory. Krista watched everything from afar. She had noticed over time that there was no unity or morale in this quest. The Empire boasts immense military might, but it may also have a weakness. As night fell, Krista got even closer to the camp. There was only one guard standing outside the Imperial tent. Krista could go in there. She needed to get him to touch at least a drop of her blood. She didn't move because some knight from behind had a sword at her throat. Krista thought it was a soldier from the patrol. She said she was a merchant with the Empire and had come here to sell food for dinner. That sounded plausible enough. The knight still had his doubts and told her to turn around slowly. Krista followed his order. The man was completely covered in armor, but Krista knew immediately who it was. Because his sword had an imperial crest on it, it was the second Prince Noah. By chance, she called his name. It was a mistake. She had addressed a member of the imperial family without due respect and could have been punished. Krista wouldn't mind if he wounded her here, but his armor won't let the blood touch him, and therein lies the problem. Krista didn't know what she should do about it. She thought deeply about it. The prince watched her for a while and then decided to let her go. He told her to go home, and he even decided to walk her to safety. Krista couldn't believe it. She was sure the second prince was a brutal warrior. Once he changed places, he would try to either kill her or rape her, but she went after him anyway. After all, no matter what happened, she would kill him herself. Not a single word was spoken the entire time they were walking. Only when they arrived did the prince say that from here she would be able to enter the safe zone of the kingdom of Bran, the territory of Kaluan. He didn't care where she was from, but from here she would be able to get home safely. Krista didn't expect him to be so honest, and didn't understand why he acted this way. After all, she was a suspected trespasser, came to the battlefield but went unpunished. The prince was already leaving, but Krista wasn't about to let him go. She asked why he hadn't killed her. Before he could reply, he suddenly felt sick and even collapsed on the ground. Quickly, he told the woman to get out of here. Krista didn't realize what was going on. She thought maybe he was hurt or faking it, but the prince aggressively told her to leave quickly. Krista didn't know what was going on, but this was the perfect chance to helmet him under the guise of caring. She said, watching him. Then she saw the face of the second prince and was surprised. This man looked very weakened and very different from the rumors. And the second prince, who was strong in battles with a martial gift, must have a strong body. But no one could even think that he was that weak. He's definitely in no condition to fight now. And he once again told the woman to walk or he would kill her. That piercing gaze and icy voice brought Krista to her senses. She had been too relaxed before, and had forgotten that she was, after all. Even if this man is weak, he's still an enemy general who suddenly attacked and killed her brother. Krista came up with a brilliant idea. She said that to thank Mr. Noah for helping her, she wanted to kiss him. It was so sudden and strange that he had not yet had time to answer anything. Krista pulled herself to him and kissed him, but it wasn't enough. She stuck her tongue out so that her saliva was sure to get into his system. All of Krista's bodily fluids are deadly poisonous. Not just blood, but saliva and tears as well. Krista had kissed him long enough. So now she expected to see him die, but as soon as she pulled away, the prince pulled her to him again. He decided to continue the kiss, and it was very passionate. He held her so tightly, and Krista didn't understand why he was acting like this. She didn't want to continue this any longer, so she pulled away again. But the prince kissed her again. Besides, he didn't look like he was sick at all, and most importantly, he still wasn't dead. Krista didn't realize what was happening because the strength was leaving her body. And when the man finally let her go, Krista saw that his face had changed completely. He had drunk her deadly poison, but on the contrary, he was healthier. A few minutes ago, he had been very exhausted, but now he was full of energy. The prince himself didn't realize what had happened, but it was delicious to him. He asked what she had done to him, but Krista didn't know the answer to that question herself. In fact, she was the one who needed to ask why he was fine after drinking the deadly poison and not dead. The prince asked why she had kissed him. Krista reminded him that it was to thank him for his help, and began to slowly walk away from him. We can't let her real goal of killing him be revealed. The prince wouldn't let her leave. He suspected her of something and asked if that was definitely the real reason. Krista was scared. She decided to say that she had actually loved him all this time. This phrase and her actions seemed very sincere. Since she doesn't know why her poison had no effect, she has no choice but to give up killing now. But she couldn't just go home. She needed to make some kind of connection with Noah. She decided to confess that her name is actually Krista Akanidi von Brandstetter, and she is a princess of the Kingdom of Bran. To make him believe her for sure, she named a code known only to members of the royal family, which was Im Karave Rativa. The prince was really very surprised. He asked why the real princess had come here. Krista continued to lie, saying that she had wanted to meet him for a long time. Despite being asked to stay at the border, she could not stay and reach this place. The prince didn't believe that. The battlefield was not a place where a princess could come to. Obviously, she had come up with some absurd excuse. But Krista continued to say confidently that she wasn't lying. The princess can't freely date her lover, so she thought that now was the favorable moment, and she would do anything for Mr. Noah. The prince still didn't understand her behavior. After all, the Empire had killed her brother. Krista said that the sisters and brothers of the royal family were only related by blood. It was actually very humiliating to flatter the enemy, but it was in order to destroy him. Therefore, Krista tried very hard. The prince seemed to believe it. Besides, she said she would do anything for him. So, after some thought, he asked her to marry him. Krista hoped it was a joke, but the prince was serious. Since she loved him, there shouldn't be any problems. Krista felt disgusted, but surely this was the prince's way of testing whether she was lying or not. Of course, she said that a prince and princess already waiting for the states couldn't get married during the war, and it could only work out if he stopped the war. Noah said he would stop the war in order to marry her. He said that the Empire's goal was actually the gold mines near the border. If it is possible to mine gold, the emperor does not care about any means. Using the marriage as an excuse to restore the alliance, the kingdom would have to cede 80% of its gold production to the empire. Krista wasn't stupid. She could not agree to such an unfavorable offer. 80% to give to the enemy was too greedy. She offered him 60%. But of course, that would require contacting the emperor and finding out everything. Besides, it really is better to lose the mines than the whole country. Krista had to go out of her way to convince her royal family to the proposal, but she would need the prince's cooperation to do so. To make the terms of the deal favorable, in return for a steady receipt of gold, Krista asked that the empire defend the kingdom of Bran. If the empire agreed to make such a military alliance, then of course everyone would agree. The prince said he would come to the king's castle in 7 days to talk over this deal and hear the answer. Through this, Krista will be able to connect with the prince and end the war, but she can't bear to marry the enemy who killed her brother. The prince wanted to show his gratitude for her kind, so he proposed marriage to her. Krista thought that her deadly poison didn't work for sure because of this prince's divine gift, so she agreed to marry him so that she could be around him more, scoping out his gift and waiting for an opportunity for revenge. Until then, she will continue to deceive him. Elmar's funeral was held in the kingdom. He received such strong love from the people, and yet he has such a modest funeral. The queen suffered the most. It was very sad that Elmar had died. The woman had obsessive thoughts that it would have been better if Krista had died instead of Elmar. It was at this point that Krista returned from her trip. She went first to her stepmother to tell her something. Krista told everything to her parents. Her father looked as if he could not accept the terms of the cessation of hostilities, but for the sake of the defense of the kingdom, he had to agree. He ordered the bride to be prepared for the wedding as lavishly as possible to show the determination of his country. Krista is wearing such a beautiful dress for the first time in her life, even though she is a princess. She felt as if this dress was too good for her, and she wasn't worthy of it. But this is a revenge costume, so Krista chose the dress she liked best. The stepmother looked at the lace on those sleeves and poured tea on Krista. Becoming a bride for the Gardland Empire was too rude. Plus, the groom would be that second prince. The queen couldn't let that happen. Even now, she wanted to mess with Krista, and the princess couldn't resist. Her stepmother pushed her and then pulled out a whip and started beating her, saying it was just a well-deserved punishment. Even though Elmar died, Krista dared to return without killing her enemy. Even though she has this cursed gift, she failed to use it, so she doesn't deserve to live. The queen didn't understand why, if Elmar was dead, low people like Krista were still alive. The queen beat Krista, wishing her death. She did not know that Krista was not marrying to be happy. Because of this, the princess was very offended. Her stepmother beat her so badly that the girl lost consciousness. When she came to, she was very frightened to see the place she was in. It was a torture chamber. When someone noticed that the princess had regained consciousness, they tied her to a pole, beat her repeatedly, and there was no end to it. Krista would periodically faint and regain consciousness, but there was no end to this abuse. She didn't even know how much time had passed since she'd gotten to this place anymore. The stepmother sometimes came to look at the beaten Krista. She told her not to hit her in one place so as not to spill blood. Everyone was well aware of not touching Krista's body fluids, so no one touched her with their hands. This torture room had a lot of scary tools that were used on Krista in turn. Now they heated the iron bar. It was red hot. They left a severe burn. The queen poured out all the pain of losing her son on Krista, and she actually had a lot of fun mocking the princess. They left an ugly scar right on Krista's chest and only laughed about it. But compared to Elmar's suffering, it was still not enough, so the queen ordered an even bigger burn. Soon they were done and just dumped Krista on the cold floor. That was the end of it, but only for today. The queen tells the king that Krista is being punished for skipping bride preparation, so now he doesn't know what's really going on. Krista was exhausted. She asked for water, and the queen said she would only give water if Krista would lick it off the ground. The princess said she was marrying to end this war. If the queen continued to hurt her, the empire would not take such a girl as a wife and continue the war. However, the queen was not bothered at all. Besides, if the empire found out about Krista's gift, everyone would think that she had treacherous intentions and wouldn't marry her anyway. The queen was going to pretend that no one knew about the princess's gift and let her marry, but only after making her experience the great suffering that Elmar had endured. The queen wanted to kill Krista in a very painful way. In truth, living in such an environment was really not something she wanted to do, but Krista wasn't going to die until she killed the other prince. She had to drink at least some water to not die, even though she had to lick water off the ground. The queen didn't like that Krista was so arrogant, so she came up with a new idea. She said she would skin Krista and show it to Elmar's grave so that this child would rejoice. Krista banged her head against the mirror and told the queen to take those words back because that statement was an insult to Elmar. Her own mother knew her son worse than Krista did, and that made the princess very angry. So she banged her head against the mirror a few more times and eventually started bleeding heavily. For a second, everyone was afraid of blood. Plus, Krista threatened them with death. They knew that all of her body fluids were poisonous, so they were very wary of touching her. Krista tried to escape from this place. She thought that Prince Noah should come to the royal palace today to hear the answer to the wedding proposal. Krista was supposed to meet Prince Noah, not even for myself, but for Elmar and the country. She finally found her way out of this horrible place, but as soon as she opened the doors, she found that there were already soldiers standing outside. They were armed, so they quickly grabbed Krista. They were not afraid to die from her poison. The queen came in after a while to laugh at Krista, who really thought that if she went outside, she could marry Prince Noah. The queen said that there was no need to nurture the hope of marriage because she had already sent a letter of rejection to the empire. She could not tolerate either Krista's marriage or an alliance with the empire. Krista was eventually sent back to the torture room, beaten and left alone. She thought about the prince for a while. He was so sure he wanted to marry her, it was unlikely he would refuse to marry her. Krista didn't want to die in a place like this, but nothing depended on her now. Before long, Prince Noah arrived here. It had been a long time since he had been here last, and he went to meet the king still wearing his armor. He asked the king if Princess Krista's words had reached him. The king said that he had learned everything, accepts all conditions, and is ready to give his daughter in marriage. Noah was very disappointed at such words. The king acted as if he had no pride at all, and besides, he looked like he was weak in battle. Noah realized that the reason why the princess herself came to the battlefield was for the peaceful safety of the kingdom, but the prince was still very surprised by her act. The royal family must have thought they could stop the war if they showed mercy and benevolence. It's a thought peculiar to a princess raised in love. Normally, Noah wouldn't have taken it seriously, but his poor state of health, which had persisted for years, was improved by just one kiss with the princess. And a day later, he returned. He was the same, and the bad condition was gone, but it was already clear that this girl had some kind of power. The prince asked when Krista was coming, but the king kept delaying the moment, saying her preparation was taking a long time, when in fact the king himself didn't know where the princess was because she was missing. And if Prince Noah finds out, the kingdom of Bran is finished. The king decided to entertain the prince before Krista showed up. He offered to show him a garden with rare flowers that were definitely not found in the empire. Noah agreed to wait another half hour, but if Princess Krista didn't show up in that time, it would be considered a treasonous plot against the empire. The king said he would speed up the preparations because it was indeed very dangerous. The prince went into the garden. It was a very beautiful place, but Noah thought of only one thing: how preparations could take so long. Or perhaps the princess is now scared of marriage and doesn't want to get married. A commotion arose because the horse began to rage and no one could calm it down. This case didn't concern Prince Noah at all, but the situation was getting out of hand. A horse could kill several people. The prince decided to calm the horse down. He brought her back to normal easily. Everyone was very grateful to the prince who bailed them out. He was more interested in why the horse was freaking out so much, because everything was normal. People didn't know it either, because usually this horse is very calm. The horse was brought here to eat meadow grass as usual, and then the prince turned his attention to the grass. Very close by, he noticed a dead squirrel. That must have been what the horse was afraid of. The prince picked up the poor animal and realized it wasn't dead. It was just unconscious. That means there's something nearby that's exuding poison. The prince tensed. Something strange was going on in this palace. Suddenly, the queen called out to him and asked what he was doing there. Noah didn't understand why Queen Bran was even in such a place. And besides, she didn't seem to recognize him. Noah introduced himself to her, giving her his full name, Noah Gilbert von Hausen Gardner, 2nd Prince. And he said he came here to take Princess Krista and make her his wife. When he stood before her, the queen was very frightened. First of all, this man Noah was very big and intimidating. Most importantly, he should not have come here. The queen said she had sent a letter to the empire renouncing her engagement to Krista, but the prince had not received such a letter. Besides, he had already spoken to the king about it. The queen was very annoyed. Her husband had behaved this way and the empire had ignored her letter. But most importantly, right now, Prince Noah was already tired of waiting for Princess Krista's preparations to be finished. He would like to accompany her as soon as possible. The queen said she would hurry the princess up now, and suggested that Noah spend time in the royal garden. As he started to leave to get his escorts, the queen went to the place where Krista was locked up. Noah turned around at this point, but he began to suspect something amiss. The queen had not gone to the princess, but to some tower. The prince's attendants apologized to him for the inconvenience with the stable boy, but Noah didn't care about that. He quickly disappeared from sight because he went into the garden. Krista was lying in the dungeon. She was still alive, and she woke up when she heard her stepmother's disgusted voice, who went down to the basement and cursed everyone, but most of all she cursed Krista, who was like an eyesore, always getting in the way. The queen kicked Krista with her foot, but the princess didn't realize what was happening anymore. She had experienced too much pain in these few days. The queen took the rope and wrapped it around Krista's neck. Now she was going to kill Krista with her own hands, and it was hard for the princess to resist. For all this time she had eaten nothing and been abused. The queen didn't understand why Noah had come to see Krista, why he had come for such a repulsive wench. Krista heard Noah come. Then she bit her lip hard and blood came out. The queen was frightened by this, so she immediately moved away from Krista to avoid touching this poison. Most importantly, Krista has hope. Even though her stepmother told her that she refused the engagement, Krista still has hope. This look annoyed the queen greatly, so she picked up an iron crowbar. She was definitely going to kill Krista now, and tell Noah that the princess didn't want to be a bride for the empire that killed her brother and killed herself. Krista wanted to live, but her body wouldn't move. No matter how hard she forced herself, she just didn't have the strength. The queen struck her blow, and very hard, except she missed and was now lying on the ground, not realizing what had happened. And behind her stood a warrior. Krista recognized the silhouette immediately. Noah looked at Krista with shocked eyes. He thought she was getting ready to get married, but now it was obvious that she was being tortured here, and he couldn't even realize how much pain she was in because her whole body was in a terrible state. He asked the queen if it was such a custom here to torture girls getting married. Of course she couldn't answer that question. Right now the queen didn't know what she should do or why Noah had come here at all. Nearby he saw a bucket of water standing, and he took Krista in his arms to give her a drink. Krista could hardly move her lips. She was glad Prince Noah had come. The queen was annoyed that she couldn't kill Krista, but now she was still in an advantageous position because it was a great chance. If the prince touched Krista's blood now, he would die. The problem was that he was in armor, but still only one misstep and he would touch a drop of her blood. Krista was unable to drink on her own. The prince thought of nothing better than to remove his helmet, to fill his mouth with water, and get Krista drunk himself through a kiss. The queen looked with admiration at what was about to happen. She realized that right through her mouth, the prince would definitely die. It seemed as if God was on her side today. If Noah dies from Krista's deadly poison and then the queen executes the princess, everything goes great. Their lips made contact. Prince Noah tried to pour the water in slowly and carefully. When he succeeded, he pulled away from Krista and felt some sweetness again, the same as the last time they'd kissed in the woods. Krista was even more surprised now than last time. Not only did he not die from her blood poison, but his complexion was also much better than it had been. There was a constant question of who he was in general, but she couldn't ask about it. She didn't have the strength at all. The queen, who a few seconds ago had been ready to celebrate death, was now shocked. Why hadn't Krista's poison worked? Noah put on his helmet, took his bride in his arms, and walked toward the exit of that tower. But before he did, he asked the queen if she was going to do something. The queen said nothing, but it was clear from the look in her eyes. She told the prince to hurry up and get Krista out of here. It was disgusting to look at her this close. Noah was going to take his bride anyway, and now he finally did. Even though he was the enemy, Krista was still relieved that he had taken her away from this place. He killed Elmar but kept Krista alive. That split her opinion into two sides. Noah carried the bride into the carriage and sat next to her. He asked Krista if her mother was always like this. The princess said it wasn't her birth mother. That's why she was acting like that. Noah didn't need to explain anything. He understood it all quickly and was going to bring this bitter truth to King Bran. He pulled out a small suitcase of medicine and began to dab at Krista's wounds. It hurt a lot, but she didn't care. This person, even after touching the poison, feels completely normal. Normally the skin should become inflamed when it comes into contact with blood, but the prince is fine. And Noah marveled that, with such serious wounds, Krista was making only faint sounds. He now realized that Princess Krista was not a child who had been raised with care, and Bran's royal family was hiding such a dark secret. But the princess, even realizing what she would face, still came to the battlefield to meet him. Noah was delighted. Krista did not bow to her stepmother's injustice. She has such a powerful spiritual force. If Krista had been born a warrior, she would have accomplished many military feats. And thinking about it, Noah marveled. Krista didn't really know what he meant. He seemed to mean that it was a mistake for her to be born a princess, and it made her feel uncomfortable. He finished treating the wounds that were visible, but then he turned his attention to Krista's chest. There was a cut on her dress and a burn showing through under the fabric, and Noah reached out a hand. Krista quickly stopped him, but he was only going to apply the medicine. Krista said you don't have to do that, but the prince said you have to or it will fester. Krista said she would do it herself then, and pushed the prince away. She was afraid that if he saw that scar, a political marriage would be out of the question, and if that happened, she would never be able to get close to Noah again. He saw the state she was in and sensed her emotions, so he decided to just act quickly and abruptly, ripped the fabric at the top of her dress with the words that a wife should not hide anything from her husband. At that moment, he saw the huge burn of her breasts. Below the dress didn't tear. Noah was really shocked. That burn was severe. Krista immediately started covering it with her hands. She asked if the prince would really marry her with such a scar. Then she realized that she had asked a stupid question, because there were no men who would want to marry a girl with a body like that. She was sure it was the end. But Noah wasn't disgusted. He was calm and gently asked Krista not to hide it and show it to him. It couldn't get any worse. So she pulled her hands away, but then something very unexpected happened. Noah kissed that scar to show that he wasn't disgusted and it was okay. He certainly wasn't going to break a promise once made because of some wound. Krista didn't understand why he felt this way about someone he had only recently met. Ignoring the obstacle of the deadly poison, he touched her. Though straightforward, he was so kind to her that her heart, which had endured loneliness for so long, was about to quiver. But as her eyes collided with his, Krista realized that this man still believed that she loved him. It was amazing that he was such a sensitive person, except that he actually knew everything. Anyway, he was going to make her his wife anyway, even though he found out she wasn't really his. Krista hadn't expected her deception to be exposed so quickly, even though she had tried so hard to get him to believe her. But the most amazing thing is that he's going to marry her, even after she lied to him. They're just having a political marriage, and you're right for Noah too. Krista didn't see how a loveless marriage to the sister of the boy he'd killed could suit him. It seemed as if Noah was evil incarnate. Yet his marriage of convenience is a boon to Krista. But what is the benefit to him? She asked about it, and the prince said he needed someone who was up to speed on the situation to take control of the kingdom of Bran. Also because Krista has sweet kisses. It was very awkward. He literally said he chose his marriage partner based on the taste of her kisses. That was so low. Krista thought that even if the sky collapsed and the earth turned upside down, there was no way she would ever love this man. Noah, meanwhile, took another bottle of medicine and started dabbing it on the burn. He asked if Krista wanted to go back, but now she had no place to return to. The answer was obvious. And besides, even if she goes to hell, her goal of killing this man won't change. She's going with him to the Guardland Empire. They agreed to have a wedding ceremony as soon as Krista was well enough. And just as it was said, as soon as her health improved, they held a wedding. Even at this wedding, Prince Noah wore armor. His fiancée is actually a hostage from a damaged country, so everyone was sure the prince was indifferent to her. Krista had expected such treatment, so she wasn't surprised, keeping herself upright with dignity. Not to be ashamed in front of your little brother in heaven. Today, Krista marries the man who killed Elmar, but that doesn't mean she's forgotten the pain of losing her brother. It's a royal wedding, and the ceremony room was beautifully decorated. There was a kiss to complete the vows, but the prince said it wasn't necessary. He didn't want to take off his armor even at the wedding. What mattered to him was that they had signed the papers and the wedding ceremony was over, despite what the other people said. He took his wife by the hand and immediately led her away from the hall. Everyone immediately started discussing how pathetic it looked. The couple didn't even give a vow kiss. Krista herself didn't understand what was wrong. Noah had talked so much about the taste of her kisses, but he hadn't even kissed her in front of everyone. He literally humiliated her in front of the aristocrats, and that was the end of it. They got to the room. Krista changed her clothes and washed off all her makeup. Because Noah wore a helmet all the time, she hadn't noticed it, but now he looked bad again. Krista thought that he didn't really want to show himself to others like that, and that's why he was at the wedding in armor. However, that was none of her business. Krista was about to leave this room, and when Noah asked about it, Krista said that if he didn't even want to give a vow kiss, he didn't want a first wedding night with a trophy wife either, so she would sleep in the other room. Noah walked over and asked if she really wanted that kiss. Krista said no, but it was too late. He quickly turned her to him and kissed her. His condition immediately became better, and there was a lot of strength. He picked Krista up and placed her on his shoulder before carrying her to the bed. He told her not to worry because he would fulfill his marital duty properly. A royal marriage, after all, entails a corresponding obligation. He told Krista to undress quickly. Krista is technically his wife, but he still wanted to sleep with her. She said, "Why don't you kill me any way you want?" It was such a cold answer, but it didn't stop Noah. Krista was even the first to approach him. She was going to try something new. Even if she can't kill him with her saliva or blood, she's willing to sacrifice her entire body, and then maybe it would work to kill this man. Although there were no feelings between them, their kisses were very passionate. Noah liked it very much because it was sweet and delicious. He wanted to enjoy it some more. But at some point, Krista accidentally stopped him. But she didn't want him to think she was scared, so she tried to hide her feelings. She was disgusted, but she allowed herself to be used however he wanted. Noah wasn't going to be rushed. He kissed her hand first and then licked it. It turned out that Krista was so sweet everywhere. She of course told herself to use herself all she wanted, but she couldn't believe he even licked her hands. The man must be a real pervert. Krista was embarrassed and decided it was okay to stop there, but she couldn't leave. Noah pinned her to the bed. He kissed her again as if she was going to run away from him, but Krista wasn't going anywhere. She would bitch at anything he did to her. Ever since she woke up poisonous, she never thought she could be this close to someone. Krista remembered painfully when her beloved mother had simply kissed her daughter to stop her from crying. But then she died with agony, because at that time no one knew what Krista's ability was. From that moment on, the girl became lonely. She wasn't even allowed to touch anyone, so even her brother only ever touched through tissues. But now it's the first time Krista can be this close to someone. Noah's hands and his body were all hot. It's sad that he's the only one touching her, and he's the only one who stays okay. In the process, he stopped and asked why Krista was crying. Of course, telling the truth wasn't for her. She said it was because he wasn't good at it. But he made another movement and got a response from her body, and he had no doubt that their bodies were a good match. Physically, Krista felt good, but as soon as she remembered who this man really was, she felt disgusted. Noah licked her tears and swallowed them, because even the tears were so sweet. If Noah hadn't killed Elmar, maybe Krista could have loved him being able to touch her body. In the morning, Krista woke up. Noah was sleeping next to her. She watched his face carefully to see if he was dead or not, but he still wasn't dead. When Krista thought about how badly he would treat her, Noah looked at her with shining eyes and touched her so tenderly. But it's very frustrating that this man is troubling her heart. Suddenly, with one hand, he drew her head up and kissed her. This was very unexpected. Krista immediately bounced off of him. Noah said it was because she was trying to attack a sleeping person. Of course, they both realized that wasn't true. Noah looked at his body and he felt good, so he told Krista from this moment on to kiss him every morning. And he admitted that when he kissed her, he felt better. And Krista had seen it with her own eyes. But even so, she refused his request. Then he asked if she really wanted him to fondle her every night, because he was capable of loving her every night. But Krista didn't even think about that, and anyway, her body wouldn't stand for it. It was easier to settle for a kiss.